For thousands of years, a single flower held the keys to the divine. It grew along the banks of the Nile. It appeared in every major temple, every sacred ritual, every depiction of the gods. It was placed in the hands of the dead before burial. It was offered to the highest deities. It was painted on the walls of tombs that have survived 5,000 years. And then it disappeared. Not from the earth, from memory, from the collective knowledge of what it actually was and what it actually did. The ancient Egyptians called it the sacred blue lotus, and they did not revere it because it was beautiful. Though it was extraordinarily beautiful, they revered it because it was a doorway, a biological key encoded by nature itself that opened the human nervous system to states of consciousness that the entire Egyptian spiritual tradition was built around accessing. Today we recover what was forgotten, the flower that the gods held in their hands, the ritual that was practiced for 3,000 years, and the profound question of why something this sacred vanished so completely from the story of human civilization. Let's go deeper. The blue lotus, Nymphaea caerulea, is not a true lotus. It is a water lily, and its behavior in nature is so precise, so geometrically perfect, that the ancient Egyptians saw in it a living symbol of the cosmos itself. Every morning, as the sun rose over the Nile, the blue lotus opened. Its petals unfolded with the light, releasing a scent that ancient texts describe as unlike anything else in nature. Sweet, otherworldly, capable of inducing a state of calm euphoria in those who breathed it deeply. Every evening, as the sun descended, it closed. It withdrew beneath the surface of the water and waited for the return of the light. For the Egyptians, this daily cycle was not merely botanical, it was theological. The blue lotus embodied the most sacred mystery in their entire cosmological framework, the journey of the sun through darkness and its return to light, the cycle of death and resurrection, the descent into the underworld and the emergence into a new dawn. This is why the blue lotus appears at the very beginning of Egyptian creation mythology. The Ogdoad, the 8 primordial deities who existed before creation, were said to have emerged from the waters of chaos on a great blue lotus. The first light of existence bloomed from this flower, and the god who emerged from that lotus was Ra, the sun itself. The blue lotus was not just a symbol of the divine, it was the vessel through which the divine entered the world. Let's go deeper. But the Egyptian reverence for the blue lotus was not only symbolic, it was pharmacological. Modern biochemical analysis of Nymphaea caerulea has identified 2 primary active compounds, apomorphine and nuciferine. Together, these compounds produce effects on the human nervous system that are precise and remarkable. Apomorphine acts as a dopamine agonist. It activates the dopamine receptors in the brain, producing feelings of euphoria, warmth, and profound well-being. It also has documented aphrodisiac properties and has been used in modern medicine for the treatment of conditions related to dopamine deficiency. Nuciferine acts as an antipsychotic and anxiolytic. It reduces anxiety, quiets the overactive analytical mind, and produces a state of calm receptivity, a state in which the ordinary noise of mental activity subsides and something deeper becomes perceptible. Together, these compounds produce exactly the state that the Egyptian mystery schools were trying to induce in their initiates, a state of open, receptive, euphoric calm in which the barriers between ordinary consciousness and the deeper layers of awareness become thin. The Egyptians consumed the blue lotus in multiple ways. They steeped the flowers in wine and drank the infusion at ritual gatherings. They inhaled the scent of fresh flowers directly. They applied lotus oil to the skin and the temples. Archaeological evidence, including residue analysis of ritual vessels, confirms that blue lotus preparations were a consistent feature of Egyptian religious practice for over 3,000 years. This was not recreational. This was sacramental. The blue lotus was a technology, a biological instrument for inducing the specific states of consciousness that the Egyptian spiritual path was designed around. Let's go deeper. When you walk through the great temples of ancient Egypt, Karnak, Luxor, Abydos, the tomb of Tutankhamun, the blue lotus is everywhere. It is held in the hands of Osiris, the god of resurrection and the afterlife. It adorns the crown of Nefertum, the god of the primordial lotus, of healing and of beauty. It appears in the hands of Isis, of Hathor, of Thoth. It is offered upward toward the divine in countless relief carvings that have survived 4,000 years of history. The blue lotus was not decorative. Every element of Egyptian sacred art carried precise theological meaning. Nothing was placed in the hands of a deity by accident. When Osiris holds the blue lotus, the message is specific. The flower is associated with his resurrection, with the return of consciousness after the passage through death and darkness. The blue lotus is the symbol of what awaits on the other side of dissolution. When Nefertum wears the blue lotus as his crown, the message is that this flower is not merely a plant. It is a divine emanation, a living expression of the creative force that brought the world into being. And in the tomb of Tutankhamun, perhaps the most perfectly preserved window into Egyptian royal ritual practice, blue lotus flowers were found placed directly on the mummy of the young pharaoh. Not as decoration, as preparation for the journey his consciousness was about to undertake. The flower that opened with the sun was meant to open something in the human being who carried it into death. A door, an awareness, a recognition of the light that persisted beyond the dissolution of the body. Let's go deeper. In the Egyptian book of Coming Forth by Day, what we commonly call the Book of the Dead, there is a spell that has fascinated scholars for over a century. Spell 81 is titled, "The Spell for Being Transformed into a Lotus." It reads as a precise set of instructions for the deceased, or the initiate, to dissolve their ordinary identity and merge with the consciousness of the lotus, to become, not metaphorically, but experientially, the flower that opens with the divine light. This transformation was not understood as destruction. It was understood as the most complete form of awakening available to a human being. The lotus transformation was the moment when the individual consciousness stopped experiencing itself as separate from the divine and recognized itself as an expression of it. The same recognition that the Gnostics called gnosis, the same recognition that the Vedic tradition called moksha, the same recognition that every serious inner tradition on earth has pointed toward as the ultimate destination of the spiritual path. The Egyptians encoded it in a flower, a specific flower, one that grew along the Nile, one whose chemistry produced precisely the neurological conditions in which that recognition was most accessible. This is the sophistication that is lost when we look at ancient Egypt through the lens of modern assumptions. We see mythology where they saw technology. We see superstition where they saw precision. We see decoration, where they saw a map, a living botanical map to the deepest territory of human consciousness. Let's go deeper. So how did something this central, this foundational to one of the greatest civilizations in human history, become forgotten? The same way everything on this channel gets forgotten. It was replaced. As the mystery schools were suppressed, as the initiatory traditions were dismantled, as the institutional religions that required external intermediaries displaced the direct experience traditions that gave individuals their own access to the divine, the botanical technologies that supported direct experience became inconvenient. A plant that opens the human nervous system to direct spiritual experience is a threat to any institution that profits from being the exclusive gatekeeper of that experience. The blue lotus was not banned. It was not dramatically suppressed in the way that other sacred plants have been. It was simply forgotten, left behind, gradually removed from the living tradition as the tradition itself was dismantled and replaced. And today, most people who have heard of the blue lotus know it only as a decorative element in Egyptian art, a pretty flower, a motif. They do not know what it did. They do not know what it meant. They do not know that the most sophisticated civilization in the ancient world considered it the biological vessel of divine consciousness, the flower through which the gods entered the world and through which human beings could, for a moment, remember what they actually were. But the plant itself never disappeared. It still grows. The chemistry is still there. The door it was used to open is still there. What was lost was the knowledge of what it was for, and that knowledge is what we are recovering today. For 3,000 years, a civilization built its entire relationship to the divine around a flower, not as a symbol, as a technology, a living biological instrument for accessing the states of consciousness that they understood as the deepest truth of human existence. The flower that opened with the sun, that carried the resurrection of Osiris in its petals, that was placed in the hands of the gods and in the tombs of the dead, that was consumed in ritual to dissolve the barriers between the ordinary mind and something infinitely larger. It grew along the Nile. It is still growing today. What was lost was not the plant. What was lost was the understanding of what the ancients knew, and we have forgotten, that the boundary between human consciousness and the divine was never as fixed as we were taught, that nature itself contained instruments for crossing that boundary, and that an entire civilization, for 3,000 years, used those instruments with extraordinary precision and sophistication. The blue lotus is not a relic. It is a reminder that the ancients were not primitive, that what they knew about consciousness, about the human nervous system, about the relationship between the physical and the divine, was in many ways more sophisticated than anything the modern world has produced, and that the forgetting of that knowledge was never accidental. If this opens something in you, leave a comment below. Tell us what you felt when you first saw the blue lotus in Egyptian art. We read every one. We will see you in the next one.